What's up, everybody? Peaceful here. I got a cool deck for you today. A very different style of deck than honestly anything I've ever seen in Marvel Snap. And this deck is coming from Dara. If you don't know who Dara is, I'll have his links below. But I assume if you know Marvel Snap, you probably know who Dara is. He's one of the like three or four biggest streamers there are for Marvel Snap. So this is definitely not my deck. This is his deck. And honestly, it's a wild deck. It's a very difficult deck to play. And I'm excited to go over it with you today and kind of show you some footage from it because it was really just a crazy deck to play on ladder. And I had a ton of fun playing, even though, full disclosure, my results weren't great with it. So before we get into that, as always, if you enjoy my content, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my future content. Hit that like button. Let me know down in the comments some other decks you'd like to see. All this really helps me out, and I appreciate it. But let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so here's the deck. As you see, it looks almost like a bounce deck, right? You got a lot of these cheap one-cost cards, Nico, Spider-Ham, Forge, all cards that are really good. Black Widow, great to bounce. You got Falcon and Beast. And then just some tech cards at the top, Shadow King, Shang. Then you've got Gladiator and Doc Ock as sort of like disruption things to pull your opponent's cards into play when maybe they don't want them to. And then you've got Werewolf by Night. So this is at its core a Werewolf by Night bounce deck, and you really want to kind of be setting your play lines and your snapping patterns around that, as we'll get into in a little bit. But generally, what you want to try and do is you want to use Spider Ham, Black Widow, Gladiator, Doc Ock throughout the game to disrupt your opponent, mess with their plays, make it harder for them to have winning lines. And at some point, you're dropping Werewolf by Night, bouncing it around with these cheap cards, beasting a lane with a bunch of one drops so that you can play them again, or beasting a Black Widow. That's always a very strong play because like taking away two draws from your opponent can be devastating and make it very hard for them to enact a game plan at all. And then just using Beast and Falcon to bounce stuff, and it's just wild, man. It's different than any deck that I've ever played in Marvel Snap, and that's awesome. I love seeing cards like Gladiator sort of enable these new archetypes, whereas I don't think this deck had enough pieces that fulfilled that disruption role before Gladiator. Now it does. And that is one of the main reasons I want to highlight this. This is actually a Gladiator deck that Gladiator made possible that I don't think was necessarily possible before. Now, let's go ahead and get into some of the different play lines with this deck and key combos. So you see I put here first Doc Ock and Ghost Spider. This is a play line that people have been using for a little while that I really love. It's just super cool. You play Doc Ock, you Ghost Spider him out of the lane that he's in order to get those stats utilized elsewhere. And you basically like if maybe this lane that they have, maybe they win it, but it's dead now, and you get to reposition your power elsewhere. And then they generally don't have enough cards after you Doc Ock them on turn 5 to really contest the other lanes as well as they would probably want to, especially with you pulling 10 power into another lane with Ghost Spider. So really cool combo. Devastating against certain decks. It's just absolutely devastating. Doc Ock himself is just devastating against certain decks. So stuff like Destroy, you can really mess them up with Doc Ock because their cards need to be played in specific ways, and pull in say their Arnim Zola onto a lane with like an X-23 when instead they really wanted to hit a null, or just pulling a Venom and eating all of their important key cards. It's pretty fun, and definitely where Doc Ock shines. Forge Nico into Gladiator. So Forge buffs the Gladiator. Nico, you can copy the Gladiator, or just put extra stats on it for after. It doesn't when you do it with Nico, it doesn't help with the actual on reveal. So it'll be 7 when the on reveal happens. The buff from Nico will come into place after, but it's still sometimes good to put the stats on the Gladiator because you're usually generally playing into a lane that you want to kind of clog up a little bit for your opponent. So getting Gladiator stronger, or in certain matchups, just getting an extra copy of Gladiator can be very strong. So I've really enjoyed this combo. You also, like with Nico, you can have the move one. So if you're playing against a deck with a lot of big stuff, you can Gladiator into a lane that they already have a bunch of big stuff in to try and pull one of their important cards there, where you don't necessarily mind it being, and then have the location mover move it out of that lane with Nico, and that's a really fun play as well. There's a lot of just cool stuff you can do with Gladiator that this was by far the most fun I've had playing that card. It was in this deck. It just enables a lot of really cool stuff. Not to mention, if you forge Gladiator, 9 power is generally going to be enough power to kill just about anything in most of the major decks I see play right now. Sniping something like a Miss Marvel with this it just feels good, man. It's one of the coolest things about this deck, one of the really fun lines. You see Doc Ock slash counter cards here I put as a key combo. What I mean by that is something like you Doc Ock a lane, you pull, say, their null or their death or what their, their big card, something that's you can Shang, or you pull or you clog a lane that they've already buffed up with some things, like Forager and stuff like that, where you have Shadow King targets and you just make this lane that they're locked out of. They can't protect it in any way, they can't grow it in any way, and they can't interact with you, but you just get to play, let's say Shang, and win that lane for free because you know that they can't disrupt it, stuff like that. So Doc Ock, it really is a key card a lot of times in your trickier matchups to enable your turn 6 counter cards to work to their full potential. So that's always a good thing to be watching out for when playing this deck. You see, the last thing I put is Beast. I think Beast, other than Werewolf by Night, is probably the most important card in this deck. When this deck really pops off is when you get a turn 3 Werewolf by Night and you can follow it up with several bounce card or several cheap on reveals and a bounce card like Beast, like turn 3 Werewolf by Night, turn 4 Forge into Beast, bouncing your Black Widow and Nico you played on turns 1 and 2. Stuff like that. You're just going to win that game the majority of the time. You're going to be really ahead on tempo. You're going to get that Werewolf by Night really huge, and it just, maybe you bounce a Spider Ham and get the hit another one of their cards and something like that. There's just a lot of cool things you can do with Beast. If you have Beast and Werewolf by Night, you're gonna have a good time. It's gonna be a really strong draw. Speaking of strong draws, we're gonna talk a little bit about snapping patterns with this deck. You see, I put here Beast hands and Werewolf by Night hands. Anytime you have Werewolf by Night and can curve it into a bunch of on reveals, that's when this deck really pops. I found that when you don't have Werewolf by Night, this deck could really struggle to win games because you just don't have that huge power output like a lot of other decks in the metagame do have. You do have the counter cards to sort of back up your game plan, but you really need that Werewolf by Night to help you pop off really, really hard, because otherwise you're just going to have a hard time keeping up with the points that other decks can put down. Beast is another good one to snap. Say something like turn 1 Spider Ham into Black Widow into Beast. That can be a snappable hand as well, especially in certain matchups where you know that Black Widow is going to really devastate them. Something like some of those combo decks that are running around, like the Miss Marvel Tribunal decks that are starting to gain some traction in the metagame. This can be just a devastating play line that they can never beat. And that's something to definitely watch out for and keep in mind. When you have these cards in hand, you should definitely be snapping early. And as always, when I do these videos, maybe this is the first time you've watched one of my videos, make sure if you have a hand like this early, that you snap it before your opponent sees your game plan. If you play Werewolf by Night, then snap, the likelihood your opponent stays goes down dramatically. Whereas if you say snap on turn 2, and then on turn 3 you play Werewolf by Night, it's too late. You've already got your board down, and they don't know what you have that's strong. So definitely be watching out for these hands. These are the hands that really make this deck pop. Otherwise, I did find that this deck had a really hard time winning games. I put Doc Ock here in certain locations and matchups. There are a lot of locations that Doc Ock really hoses your opponent for, like the ones that give negative power. You can really mess up some of the lower to the ground decks. Bar with no name is a pretty sweet one. Bar with no name is a little dangerous because Doc Ock is 10 power, but generally you're going to pull enough big cards that you're going to win this way. And you should be snapping it very early, before they know that you're this deck. You should snap it once you see the bar with no name or the negative power locations, if you have that Doc Ock to back it up. Well, another small scenario I did want to note, if it's the negative, any of the negative locations now make Doc Ock unshangable, which is actually a very relevant thing. As anybody who's ever played with Doc Ock knows, it always seems like when you do get the Doc Ock to fire and pull their cards into the lane, it always seems like they have that Shang in hand to punish you and kill it, which means that it's a lot less powerful than it would be otherwise. So playing it into those negative locations means he's no longer Shangable at all, even with the -1 now because of the Shang change that recently went through. Now Doc Ock becomes 9 power, and that is not a Shang target anymore. So all of those are pretty good locations to Doc Ock into, just because you protect your Doc Ock from Shang. All right, guys, there's no replacements tab for this one this time around because there's honestly not many cards in this deck you can replace, if any. I think you can play Iron Fist instead of Ghost Spider. Maybe that's the only one. if you don't have Ghost Spider, it's hard to replace this deck because all the cards are such specific use cases. There's not really another card in Snap that's just like any of these cards. So sorry to say, if you don't have the cards for this deck, you're probably not going to be able to play it. That said, it is a ton of fun if you do have those cards, and honestly, a very difficult deck to play. You'll see in these videos, I'm going to post a ton of them. This is probably going to be longer than a normal video because there were so many games, and a lot of them I just made like very minor mistakes that I want you all to see so you can sort of learn from, because this deck is very tricky to play. And I think my win rate ended up being something like 45% with the deck. I was positive cubes, but I think my win rate was like 45%, and I think it should have been closer to 55 or 60 if I had played correctly every game. So watch the games. They're super fun. Let me know what you think of the deck below. Any suggestions or things for other cards that maybe people could try if they're missing certain cards. That would be super helpful because I honestly couldn't think of any. And as always, I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. A little more advantageous for those voting. Everyone doing the destroy quest. Gonna end up over here anyway. All right, try again, chat. All right, I know this doesn't move it, but it's fine.
Enough said, bub.
No Nico for you. This will pull their whole hand, right? Sure did. Five, 7, 9. It's so hard, chat. We should win here, but finding the right line is tricky. This is all probably for naught because they're probably leaving. That was weird. If they drew Killmonger, which really made it complicated, but it's destroy again. Uh-oh. So it's hardly guaranteed, chat. Okay, that's not bad. I wanted something mid that wins.
Enough said, bub.
Over this exact thing. I want to pull null over here because they're definitely going to destroy here. They didn't play the Sabretooth? They have Prio? Takes away 5 here? We should have snapped. We should have snapped, Jay. I was just thinking about that. Because this covers all of our bases.
Victory.
Beautiful. Twitchery? Is it Twitchery? Like Zachary, but with Twitch? These are important things that I need to know. Twitchery, all right. I can handle that. I would like to draw Black Widow. That would be the nuts. Ah, this deck. This deck, Chuck. Consider me annoyed. Ah! No Killmonger for you. Oh, I only get 2 of these. Oh, this wasn't great. Playing too fast again.
Enough said, bub.
Enough said, Bob. Enough said. And they don't have Killmonger, so now they're locked out here. I don't even need that much power there. What did Bob ever do? Enough said, Bob. Make wishes. This is the first Alien Ant Farm song I ever heard, chat. What do we got? Something terrible. Sure. We killed the rock. Look at that. I guess that was pretty likely with the way they played that. All right, Shadow King's gonna wreck that. Four. Yep. Ha! They thought they could win, chat, but they were wrong. Mystic Chord Mini Eyes. The new song by the guy from this is a good one. Should I play it here just to have a play next turn? Nope. Happy with my decision. Let's actually do it like this. That's kind of what I was hoping would happen, honestly. Let's see what they're up to. Oh no! We murdered Jeff! Gladiator, you monster! Professor X? Really? It's one of these decks? All right, we've locked them out, chat. That was the goal. I've also locked myself out of here. It's not enough, though. They can't move anything, right? This can't move over here.
Victory.
My snap career is over, chat, because we killed Jeff. It feels like it's got good game into a lot of the major decks, but I'm just not seeing those. I'm seeing all these random decks that completely hose it. I can't remember what Heroic was playing. I wanted to play a Thanos deck today. It's been a while since I played Thanos on stream. Here we go. This should be a good matchup, right? Come on, deck. Give me something to play next turn. Actually, I don't really care, do I? It's not the end of the world if they fill it before us. We pigged the Werewolf by Night, which is really nice. Pig. Maria Hill. Falcon. That's so annoying. I think that's the worst draw on the deck, chat. It's alright, we just leave. Either Thanos next or I wanted to try out some like Sarah builds. We win now, don't we? They don't have a way to get. They already played Falcon, so they're locked out here.
Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man here.
Oh, that's fine. Ravona? No, it's got to be the other way. Anyone else feel like if I snap this, I'm dead? I mean, they just have to leave, right? No, they have Luke Cage in play. No, this still wins. It doesn't matter. So that means this is slightly better. Okay.
Victory.
This was an okay game. Dude, yeah, Reliant K, baby.
Oh, snap.
Oh, I'm so slow, man. It's gonna get pulled over, chat. Don't forget. All right, it's not gonna move, chat. Yeah.
All systems go.
That doesn't run big things. I don't think they can win. Play these the wrong way. 5-8. I played them wrong. Okay. I think the thing I was scared of there was the thing I needed to watch out for was Gamora. And I didn't play around Gamora very well at all.